If we are to have a spiritual revival, we've got to confess. We've got to confess our collective sin and make a different set of choices. The land of the free is the incarceration capital of the world. We warehouse over 2 million Americans, about 2.4 million Americans. No other nation comes close, both in terms of the per capita representation of our prison population or sheer numbers. We warehouse 25% of the world's prisoners in America. With 5% of the world's population, 25% of the world's prisoners are in the United States of America. That's not a function of crime. That's a set of public policy choices driven by market forces. More African Americans under supervision than were in slavery in 1850. Is Jim Crow reinscribed in a new day? Dr. King fought against job discrimination, fought against housing discrimination, fought against voting discrimination. But now through the language of law and order, after you have served time in America's prison system, can I tell you, it's actually worse than that. After you've been arrested, not even necessarily convicted after being arrested, job discrimination is legal. Think about that. And so last year, our church put together an expungement event. I'm sitting down with the chair of the Board of Commissioners for Fulton County, and he and I, we're both Morehouse men, and Morehouse men, you know, we were thoroughly indoctrinated during our 4 years. We believe we can do anything. So we were like, what good are we going to do in the world? And so we sat down over breakfast one day, and we decided to do this expungement event in Fulton County. I don't know what it's like in your area, but in Fulton County, it takes 120 days for someone to get their arrest record expunged. I need you to hear me because most Americans do not understand this, but it's a reality for your neighbors. These are people who've been arrested, never convicted. In some cases, they've been to court and they've been acquitted of all charges, but somewhere out there, there's a record. And so you can't get a job. If you get a job, you can't get a good job. Can't get an apartment. So we decided to have an expungement event in Fulton County. It usually takes 120 days. You go to this office, and you go to this office, you go to this office, you go to this office, you pay a fine, and then 120 days later, maybe your record is expunged. We said, nonsense. We want all of these groups to come to the church. And so we used the moral authority of the church and his authority as the chair of the Fulton County Commission, and we asked the district attorney to do an unusual thing, cooperate with the public defender. And we asked both of them to cooperate with the judges. And we asked the judges to cooperate with the clerk, and the clerk to cooperate with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. And we created a command center in our church banquet hall, much like this, so that people could come to one place, and we waived all of the fees in the spirit. In the spirit of the Jubilee, we said no fees. The debts have been canceled. They said, well, we got to have the GBI there because they have the record. I said, well, I got a problem. If they pull up the GBI record, doesn't that mean you get to see if there's an outstanding warrant? They said, yeah, well, if there's an outstanding warrant, don't you have to arrest them? Yes. I said, well, you're not going to arrest anybody in my church. This is the church. So a miracle happened. We convinced the GBI not to look at the page, which would tell them whether or not there was an outstanding warrant. So the only thing you could get was redemption. The worst you could get was, no, we can't help you. Let's see if there's something else we can do. And so one of the proudest moments in my ministry is when I arrived at my church on a Saturday morning. looked across the sanctuary, and there was a sea of faces. And it gave me goosebumps to know that everybody in the sanctuary had a record. But you know, I'm baptized in the Pentecostal Baptist tradition. And so I wouldn't be a Baptist preacher if I didn't tell you that that's true every Sunday. Everybody has a record. And they went to church with a record and they walked out without a record. Hundreds of people. We've done over 1,000 criminal arrests, expungements. A few months after that, I was sitting in the barbershop. I know you find that hard to believe. It's good therapy. I was at the barbershop, and this man walked up to me and he said, "Rev, that was a great event you had. Thank you." And, you know, I thought he was just thanking me for this event. It had gotten news coverage. I said, "Thank you very much, sir." And I was rushing to get out. He said, "No, Rev, slow down now. You don't understand what I'm trying to tell you." I said, "What is it, sir?" He said, "You expunged my record that day." He was a middle-aged looking man, looked middle class. See, politics of respectability. Looked like somebody who wouldn't have a problem like that. He said, 20 years ago, I had an issue with a check. I've gone on. I've had no more trouble with the law. He said, for 20 years, I've never been able to get a good job. I've been able to get jobs, but nothing commensurate with my skill set. He said, but I went to the church, and I got my record cleared while I was at church. That sounds right. And he said, as a result of that, I've been able to get a good job. My whole quality of life, Rev, has improved.